Hi everybody, welcome back. This is part 17 now of the Trumpeter 200 scale Bismarck build series, and this time I've carried on with the bridge structure, and this time I've added the upper and lower bridge deck levels. So again, 2 or 3 fairly large Trumpeter parts, to which I've added the usual Pontos photo etch on the bulkheads. But I've also started to fit some of the detail bridge equipment as well. And the first of the guns that I made a few episodes ago, almost at the beginning of the build series. So it's really useful to be able to build the model in this way with a fairly large structure like this not being fitted to the main hull. And that enables me to keep the model covered up in its case, you can see behind me. And that just protects it from any dust or dirt, and it's just safer in there whilst I get on with the rest of the build. I'm able to do it in this way because the fit of these Trumpeter parts onto the hull, I've tested them and they're really good. So when I've got a little bit further with the bridge, at that point I'll then fit it to the model. But for now I'll show you how these next 2 decks went together. Okay, so I'm kicking off this week with these 3 main Trumpeter parts. So this forms the lower mast deck, this section, the upper mast deck, which goes a bit further back, and the conning tower, which fits like that. We've also got a piece of photo etch here, which forms the gratings on this forward part of the bridge. And actually I didn't realise that these photo etch pieces for this and the deck below that I built last week were actually wooden grating. So I painted them in the dark grey anthracite colour until it was pointed out to me by Klaus that actually there were wooden gratings, and I decided to repaint them. So when I come to paint this section of deck, I'll take the other one off that I did last week and repaint that, and then we should be back on track. So thanks Klaus for pointing that one out to me. I hadn't actually glued that down, so your intervention came just in time, thanks. So this is the usual job to do with these bulkheads, of clearing the some of the plastic and replacing it with photo etch. That's the first job. Not too much to do this time because obviously the parts are a lot smaller. So I'll crack on, get those done. I was thinking back for when I built the hood and thinking really that this bridge is much more simple to put together than the hoods was. Trumpeter had made quite a few mistakes in the configuration of the hood's bridge. So the Pontos set had an awful lot of new brass parts. In some cases, whole sections of the bridge structure were replaced with new brass. But with this kit, it's a lot more straightforward. And actually my progress is a little bit quicker, I think, with this than it was with the hood. So hopefully we'll be done a little bit sooner. The hood took something like 10 months to build and about 50 episodes, so we might do a little bit quicker than that, I think, with this kit. Someone last week was a bit worried on the Premiere chat about my proximity of the knife to my thumb. But actually, although I've cut myself plenty of times with these blades, my thumb is actually below the line of where I'm cutting, so from above it might look pretty close, but actually my thumb is reasonably safe under there. conning tower here at the back has a moulding seam in it. It's where the slide moulds have gone together. So they need to come off. We've got a few bits of Trumpeter plastic to fit before I do the photo etch. So these are the raft mountings. We need this Trumpeter part F16 for the ammunition hoist. We add to that with some photo etch, but we need the frame to start with. So I'll come back to that in a while. Get the photo etch on these bulkheads now. I think actually I started that in the wrong place, but I'll just have to patch up on the other side. I forgot to take this off. This platform's replaced with some photo etch. It's a grating. Nearly finished these cables now. It's nearly empty on the fret, for the cables at least, and I won't be sorry really, because they're quite fiddly, time consuming. I'm not certain that they add a massive amount to the model. I think the problem is that the Trumpeter mouldings that they replace are inconsistent. So in some places they look okay, and then in others they kind of fade out really, probably due to moulding limitations. Whereas obviously the photo etch is the same all the way around. I sometimes get asked if it's really worth doing all this photo etch work, and there isn't an easy answer to that, I don't think. Sometimes it does make a difference, sometimes less so, but that's kind of not the point for me. I just enjoy doing it. I don't mind photo etch at all, and I just like the challenge of fitting some of this stuff. The other thing, of course, is that there'll be times when you absolutely have to use photo etch. So there are parts in this particular kit in the Trumpeter photo etch set that there's no plastic alternative for. You've got to use it. So practice just helps you overcome the situations where you've got no choice. The bottom line is that the hobby is meant to be enjoyable, and if you don't enjoy it and you can get away with not doing it, then don't do it. It's as simple as that. These doors that I've just fitted, I've fitted the correct number, but they're not the right door. They did have a window in them, but I've run out of doors with windows, so I don't know what Pontos have done there. In the instructions it shows these two doors as having the windows in, but the part on the fret is this type. So what I'll do is just drill through those just to create that window in them. That's a bit of a puzzle. I'm just wondering if there was an error in numbering earlier on in the build and I've fitted the wrong door at some stage. So we'll have to see. I'm just going to have to drill those out. So a bit of a fix. Okay, so all the bulkheads are done now. All the photo etches on them. I didn't do everything on there on camera because it's just the same as what I've done before on the other bulkheads further down the ship. So I didn't want to repeat all that. But there's something different here with this ammunition hoist. This is the Trumpeter part that we need, and this hoist goes along the front of this deck house here, and it's enhanced with some Pontos photo etch, so we'll put that together. Fairly straightforward shape. This fits into the tray here at the front of the bulkhead. And mine doesn't quite fit in, the sides are a bit too narrow. So these walls here need thinning down quite a bit for this part to fit. But it goes in eventually. Now that it's in position, I'm just going to secure that whilst I've got it. I've gone ahead and painted these assemblies now, and I did that off camera because you've seen this process before in previous episodes where I've put the boot line along the bottom of the bulkheads. So it's just the same stuff, I didn't want to repeat that again. This here has had some railing fitted around the top. It's just a half rail around the top, and again I've done that off camera, but I will cover how I do the railings in a later episode. So this is all ready to go together now. It's the conning tower, and this is the ammunition hoist, and I had an awful lot of trouble with this. It ended up, the Pontos parts just disintegrated basically because they're so fine, and I made the mistake of trying to do all the folds of the delicate photo etch before I fitted it to the plastic trumpeter part, and it was just too weak to withstand that folding. So what I should have done really is fit the Pontos part into this frame. That would have given me a firm basis then for folding the actual ammunition trays, which are down at the bottom, and there's a very fine frame at the top. But that didn't work because I messed around with it too much trying to fold it, and as I say, it just fell apart. So what I had to do was basically rebuild this in bits, using bits of spare photo etch and what I could salvage of the Pontos parts. So it's a lesson learned. I should really have known better than to try and fold that, but we can fit that now. It goes here. You remember I fitted this ammunition box, and the hoist goes just in front of it. Obviously I had to do all the painting before fitting this because you couldn't possibly mask around it. There are also a couple of little stays at the front, which I'm just going to glue on and paint by brush. So I'll let those dry, just give them a bit of the sky grey just to match the rest. Okay, that'll do, not going to mess about with that. So the next thing is to fit the decks. You remember at the beginning of the video I mentioned that I'd painted the larger of these two in the anthracite colour, the German grey, when it turned out that they're wood, so I've repainted them. And I've done them in a mixture of Mr. Hobby's sail colour with an overspray of some Tamiya dark earth, just until I got the sort of shade that I was looking for. Just a natural wooden colour. And these need to be fixed with epoxy because they're too big for CA. They'll twist and break off. So you just need to go careful with this stuff because I find it very messy. And I don't want it squeezing out onto the paintwork. So I'm just applying it at intervals really. Easy does it. This one's a bit springy, which is exactly the reason why you need to use epoxy for it. Because of the spring in it, I'm just going to hold this until the glue is hardened off. And I know that because I've got the glue next to me on the mixing board, and I can see whether or not it's hardened. I think that's set now. It's not going to go anywhere. So I've got this little bit of wooden deck to fit here at the back. I was wondering why I was having trouble getting that deck to lie down, and it was simply because I'd left a piece of masking tape on the splinter shield. So it just shows you how accurately these decks are cut, that the width or the thickness of a piece of masking tape was stopping it sitting down. Now I want to start building some of the equipment onto these decks as we go upwards, because it's sometimes a little bit harder to get them fitted once you've got all the decks stacked on top of each other. It's worth spending a bit of time cleaning these parts up, just getting the seam lines off them. Because obviously the paint picks up any flaws, and it just spoils the overall effect really. Doesn't take long to clean them up. It's just one of those things with ship models that you get lots of the same sort of assembly. So I'll carry on cleaning these and then get them painted in the grey, and we'll come back, fit them onto the ship, and at that point I'll work out what they all are. Okay, so I'll get the equipment on now. I've painted it all in the sky grey. These are compass repeaters. I don't know what they do, but that's what they're called. And then on the lower bridge deck, we've got quite a few bits and pieces to fit. Each of these are searchlight directors. And this is one of the telegraphs. Pair of storage lockers. clear out the holes for the equipment in this wooden deck. Just realised I've missed some wooden deck here at the back. Okay, so time to bring some of these bits and pieces together. These are some of the single 20mm guns that I built a few episodes ago, and I've got two of these to fit on the lower bridge deck. And I've got a couple of these twin mountings to fit as well on the upper bridge deck. Again, I made these a few episodes ago. There are 8 of these on the ship altogether. These are some life rafts which I've just painted in Tamiya's yellow green. They go along the bulkheads here. And I'm just going to attach these with a blob of MIG Ultra. This is an acrylic glue. So it's good stuff. I use this quite a lot. It's a nice strong fixing with these. It's designed for photo etch and clear. I've never tried it on photo etch actually, I must do that. It's very high strength. So I'd recommend this stuff, MIG Ultra Glue. So these units can go together now. So the lower bridge deck is this. And the conning tower. Obviously the rangefinder has to be fitted to the top here. But I've not done that because there's a radar array on the front which I'm just a bit frightened of damaging, so I'll leave that off for the moment. And then the upper bridge deck fits like that. So that's as much as I want to do on the lower bridge for the moment. There are some other bits and pieces to complete on this. There are 3 gangways to fit in these 3 positions. I've got the waterways that go around the edge of the wooden deck to fit, and of course there are railings all the way around the bridge deck levels. But I don't want to put the railings on whilst ever I'm doing quite a bit of handling of these parts, so I'll just leave them off for the time being. The other bits that we've got to fit are these, which are a pair of shields for the vents on this lower part of the structure. So they fit just at the side there. And one thing that I have done with these, before I paint them I'll show you, is to just thin out the edges. So I've just filed down the edges of the material to a sharp edge. And that just gives the illusion that the plastic is a lot thinner than it actually is. Because this was fairly thin plate, there was no armour on it, it was just a protection from the weather. And the trumpeter parts are just a little bit thick in gauge, so that just little refinement, it's easy enough to do, just a minute or two, and it just improves the look of these parts. So I'll fit those later on. The next step is to continue building upwards, and the next structure is here at the back, which leads up to the Admiral's Bridge deck level, and then there are a couple of searchlight platforms on top of that. So there's quite a bit of work to do, even though they're fairly small structures. So that'll be for next time. Okay, so all done for another episode. I've got one or two bits and pieces to finish on this, as I've explained. I'll do those over the next couple of days. So I'm fairly happy with progress so far. The trumpeter parts are fitting together really well. There are one or two annoyances, as is usual with the Pontos parts, either through difficulty with the instructions or really over-engineered and very small photo etch. But there are a couple of lessons learned, as I've mentioned earlier on in the video, about dealing with some of these very fine Pontos parts. So that just goes into the memory bank, and hopefully I'll learn for next time. So I'm going to have a day or so now starting the Tsukimura 132 scale 109 that I previewed last week, and I'm really looking forward to starting that build. But if you're following the Bismarck, I'll see you again next Friday for the next part of the series, part 18. So I'll see you then, everybody. Look after yourselves. Bye for now.